Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, an ancient Indian toolkit explicitly designed to decode reality itself. Seriously, if you've ever caught yourself wondering how we can definitively prove something is factually true, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to break down an incredible system of logic that has been used for centuries to separate fact from fiction. But first, I gotta ask you a pretty fundamental question. Just think about this for a second. How do you actually know what's true? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, right? You see something, you hear something, but what happens when your physical senses fail you? How do you prove something exists when you can't even see it? We tend to take our everyday assumptions about truth for granted, but today, our ancient logical toolkit is going to help us solve this central mystery of human understanding. Okay, let's dive into this. In Indian philosophy, the recognized means of acquiring valid knowledge are known as pramāṇas. You can kind of think of pramāṇas as your epistemological magnifying glasses. They are the definitive instruments, the rigorous tests that a thought or an observation absolutely must pass through to be considered valid, undeniable knowledge. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the quest for valid knowledge. Second, we'll break down direct perception and inference. Third, we'll explore comparison and verbal testimony. Fourth, we're diving into presumption and knowing absence. And finally, we'll bring the whole shebang together into the 6 pathways to truth. Let's kick things off right away with Section 1, the quest for valid knowledge, and building the epistemological toolkit. Now, it's worth noting that different schools of ancient thought accepted different numbers of these tools, but we're going to focus on the 6 core pillars. These form a comprehensive system that perfectly balances observation and logic. And honestly, this illustrates the incredible richness of Indian philosophy. They recognized early on that human experience is wildly complex, and because of that, there isn't just one narrow way to prove a fact. By acknowledging multiple valid pathways to truth, they essentially built a system that is remarkably robust. Moving right along to Section 2, direct perception and inference. These are the foundational pillars of logic. These next 2 tools represent the most universally recognized primal ways we humans gather and process information about the world around us. The first pillar is Pratyakṣa, which translates to perception. This is direct sensory knowledge. It arises the exact microsecond your sense organs come into physical contact with an object. It's the most immediate, undeniable awareness we can experience. For example, if you physically see a fire blazing right in front of you, or you hear music playing, boom, you possess immediate, valid knowledge of that fire or that music. So, the crucial point is, what happens when we can't physically see the fire directly? Well, that leads us to the second pillar, Anumāna, or inference. This is reasoning based on signs or causes. It's exactly what kicks in when direct perception just isn't possible, but clues are left behind. Let's walk through exactly how this works, because it's a massive cornerstone of Nyaya logic. Step 1. You look out and observe smoke rising on a distant hill. Step 2. You use structured premises. Basically, your past experience tells you that where there's smoke, there has to be a cause producing it. Step 3. You draw your conclusion and confidently infer the presence of fire, even though you can't actually see the flames. See what happened there? You've systematically structured your reasoning to uncover a truth. All right, Section 3, comparison and verbal testimony, basically learning from others and using analogies. So how do we acquire valid knowledge when we encounter entirely new, alien things, or when we're in a situation where we just have to rely on an outside authority? Enter our third pillar, Upamāna, or comparison. Imagine you've literally never seen a wild ox, a gavaya, in your entire life. You have zero direct perception of it, but a friend tells you, hey, it resembles a cow. Well, the next time you're in the woods and see this unknown creature, you make a cognitive leap of analogy. You connect the familiar cow to the unknown animal and instantly recognize it as a gavaya. You just gained valid knowledge simply through comparison. The fourth pillar is śabda, or verbal testimony. This is knowledge derived from a reliable authority or trustworthy experts. And this brilliantly illustrates that, thankfully, we don't have to personally discover every single truth from scratch. In the Indian tradition, the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, are considered supreme sources of valid testimony. Today, you might think of this like trusting a thoroughly vetted scientific journal. On to Section 4, presumption and knowing absence. These are the abstract pathways. Get ready, because we are exploring the most mind-bending abstract pillars of this entire toolkit right now. This is where ancient logic solves some really complex behavioral and spatial mysteries. The fifth pillar is Arthāpatti, which means implication. This one relies on deduction by sheer necessity. We use this tool to resolve apparent contradictions in the world. When two known facts clash, we have to presume a third fact to just make sense of the universe. Let me give you a classic example. If a person claims they never eat during the day, yet they remain perfectly healthy, energetic, and well-nourished, how on earth is that possible? Well, to resolve this contradiction, you naturally deduce their secret midnight snacking, don't you? You presume by necessity that they must be eating at night. That is Arthāpatti, deriving valid knowledge through necessary implication. And this builds right into our sixth and final pillar, Anupalabdhi, or non-apprehension. This highlights a truly fascinating paradox. We easily understand presence, right? If you perceive a pot on the floor, you know it's there. But this pillar tells us that staring at an absolutely empty floor gives us valid, undeniable knowledge of absence. The fact that your senses actively search for the pot and fail to apprehend it is actual logical proof that the pot is not there. Knowing that something is absent is a powerful, totally valid form of knowing. Which brings us to Section 5, 6 Pathways to Truth, the complete epistemological system. Now, what's really interesting about this is how perfectly everything we've just learned locks into one grand summary. It brings all these individual concepts together to show how this ancient toolkit forms a beautifully holistic view of human understanding. You've got Pratyakṣa giving us direct perception, like literally seeing a fire. Anumāna providing inference, like seeing the smoke. Upamāna offering comparison to recognize that wild ox. Śabda acting as verbal testimony. Arthāpatti catching those midnight meals through implication. And Anupalabdhi proving absence when the pot just isn't there. The absolute biggest takeaway from all of this is how flawlessly these tools combine. They create a comprehensive epistemological system that leaves no stone unturned. It balances hard empirical observation with rational inference. It leverages analogy, respects reliable authority, applies presumption when necessary, and amazingly acknowledges that even absence is a reality we can measure. So, I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up. Which pathway to truth do you actually rely on most in your everyday life? Are you someone who absolutely has to directly perceive something to believe it, or do you heavily weigh the testimony of reliable experts? The next time you claim to know something is true for sure, stop and ask yourself which of these ancient pillars is holding your argument up. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.